They didn't even help me out of the car. Gerald just popped the trunk, dragged my suitcase onto the curb, and said, "They're expecting you inside, Ma." Sherry didn't speak. She stayed buckled in the passenger seat, fiddling with her phone like this was an errand she just wanted over with. There was no hug, no photo, not even a proper goodbye. They pulled away before I made it to the entrance. Just like that. Like I was a bag of donations left outside a thrift store. Before we get into today's story, don't forget to subscribe for more heartfelt stories that celebrate the strength and wisdom of women like you. Tell us where you're watching from. We love hearing from you. Share your experience in the comments. I stood there in the wind, next to the same suitcase I used to pack for our trips to Lake Erie, that little blue one with the broken zipper. Gerald used to sit on it while I zipped it shut for him. He was 7. He used to call me his best friend. I used to believe him. The place looked tired, paint peeling around the windows, a plastic wreath still hanging from Christmas. And it was already mid-February. There was a broken bench by the walkway, and the smell, bleach mixed with something warm and soupy, hit before I even stepped inside. A young nurse opened the door for me. Her smile was quick and practiced. "You must be Mrs. Young," she said, like I had an appointment for a flu shot. She took the suitcase from me without asking and started down the hall. I followed. My room was 2D, 2 beds, beige curtains, a clock that ticked loud enough to feel like company. The other bed was already taken by a woman curled on her side, facing the wall. Her name was Midge. I didn't learn that until later. There were no welcome signs, no photo frames, just my name printed on a strip of masking tape, stuck to a drawer that didn't quite close all the way. I sat down on the edge of the bed and stared at the suitcase. It looked smaller now, like the years had shrunk it while I wasn't paying attention. Gerald had said, "It's temporary, just while we figure things out." But the way he didn't make eye contact told me everything I needed to know. When he was 10, he used to beg me to chaperone his school trips. He'd hold my hand in public. He once cried when I missed a baseball game because I had the flu. That same boy dropped me off like a package with no return address. I'd been living in the in-law apartment behind their house in Springfield for almost 6 years. I helped with their kids, cooked most nights, watched their dog when they went on vacations. Sherry never liked having me that close. I always knew that. It started with sighs, then little hints. "You should travel more. Don't you want your own space again?" Gerald just kept saying things were tight. "It's not personal, Ma. We just can't afford the extra help anymore." As if I was staff. As if bedtime stories, late-night fevers, and raising him through 2 layoffs and a divorce were services he'd outgrown. Brookshade Care Center had bingo nights on Thursdays. Gerald mentioned that like it was supposed to sweeten the deal, like my life could be traded for a game of numbers and hard chairs. The nurse showed me where to find my meals, 5 o'clock sharp. "You'll get used to the routine," she said, before handing me a thin folder with my schedule inside. She was already halfway out the door before I could ask anything. I sat on the edge of the bed for a while. The mattress creaked under me. I unpacked slowly. 3 sweaters, a pair of slippers, a framed photo of Gerald at age 5, and a paperback mystery I hadn't touched since Christmas. I didn't bring much. Something in me knew not to. Dinner was soft carrots, meatloaf, and applesauce. I ate it beside a woman who hummed hymns under her breath and a man who buttered a roll for 20 minutes without taking a bite. Nobody asked my name. Nobody asked who had dropped me off. I slept that first night in silence, listening to the soft wheeze of Midge's breathing and the hum of the hallway lights. I kept the photo of Gerald on the nightstand, just for that first night. The next morning, I tucked it back into the suitcase. Before Gerald drove off yesterday, he mumbled, "We'll call you Sunday." His eyes were already on the rearview mirror. Sherry waved without looking at me. "They haven't called, and I don't expect them to. Not anymore." The hallway smelled like bleach and boiled cabbage. Every corner looked like it hadn't been touched in years, even though someone clearly scrubbed it every morning. The place was clean, sure, but it had that kind of clean that still felt grimy. like wiping down something too old to ever really shine again. Midge, my roommate, barely moved. She just lay on her side, facing the wall. Every now and then she'd mutter something about her sister coming to pick her up. I asked the nurse once, and she just said, "Midge thinks it's 1993 most days. Best to go along with it." So I did. She thought I was her cousin from Kentucky. I didn't correct her. I didn't have the energy. There wasn't much space between our beds. If one of us got up too fast, we'd bump into each other. The window was small, but at least it brought in some light. Morning sun hit the far wall around 9:15. That was the only way I knew what time it was. The clock on the wall ticked too loud and still ran 5 minutes fast. No one called me by my name, just ma'am or Miss Young. Sometimes the aides just said, "You," and pointed. It didn't matter. I spent most of those first days staring at the ceiling, trying to remember the last time someone asked what I wanted. Not what I needed, not what they thought was best for me, just what I wanted. When I lived at Rose Bend Terrace, I used to walk the block twice a day. I knew every tenant by name, every kid who scraped their knee on the sidewalk, every broken porch light. People came to me for everything: keys locked in cars, leaking faucets, lost dogs. I kept a little black notebook in my coat pocket, wrote down repairs, birthdays, tenant complaints, even who made the best banana bread in the building. I mattered. Here, I was just a bed in room 2D. Meals came on trays. We sat in the dining room by hallway assignment, not choice. The woman across from me never spoke. The man next to her drooled into his pudding. No one looked up when I sat down. I ate my peas in silence. I thought about calling Gerald, just to hear someone familiar. But I didn't. I already knew what that conversation would sound like. "We're really busy, Ma. The boys have soccer, and Sherry's got that new project at work. You understand, right?" I understood. I just didn't accept it anymore. The walls in our room were bare. I could have asked for my things from Springfield. My rocking chair. That quilt my sister made me before she passed. The photo albums. But I didn't. If they hadn't brought them with me, I figured they weren't meant to come. That first week passed slow. Each day the same. Wake up. Sit in the chair. Wait for pills. Eat soft food. Try to ignore the ticking clock. One morning, I asked an aide what day it was. She didn't even look up from her clipboard when she answered, "Wednesday," like that was supposed to be enough. There were no calendars in the rooms, no plants, no music, just a TV in the rec room that stayed on the game show channel all afternoon. Midge whispered about snow tires in her sleep. I listened to her breathing because it was the only sound that reminded me there was still life near me. The staff was polite enough, but rushed, always moving from one task to another. Like kindness had to fit into a 15-minute window between bed checks and meds. One night, while Midge snored gently and the hallway lights hummed overhead, I got up and opened the small drawer beside my bed. Inside was a photo I hadn't looked at since I packed my things. Gerald, 6 years old, with a goofy grin and grass stains on his jeans. He was holding up a frog we found in the backyard, back when he still thought I hung the moon. I stared at it just long enough for my chest to tighten. Then I turned it over and slid it to the bottom of the drawer. There was nothing left in looking back. The silence in that room was thick, not peaceful, just heavy. Like everything I used to be was sitting in the corner, watching me shrink. I lay back down and stared at the ceiling again. Midge stirred, mumbled something about missing her bus. I didn't answer. There wasn't much left to say. Back when my knees worked better and people still called me Mrs. Young, with respect, I ran a block of homes in a neighborhood called Rose Bend Circle. It wasn't fancy, but it was solid. 12 houses. I managed the whole row and owned half of them. I wasn't born into money. My first property came after my husband passed. I used the life insurance check and every dime I'd saved from working 2 jobs at the time. Bought a small 2-bedroom on the east end of Columbus. From there, I learned, saved, bought another, then another. I didn't live big, didn't take vacations, but I built something that was mine, and I took care of it. Fixed broken sinks myself, painted shutters on Saturdays. Tenants stayed because they knew someone gave a damn, and they knew I did. When Gerald and Sherry were expecting their second child, they started looking for something bigger. Back then, they were still talking to me like I mattered. Sherry said, "We're tired of apartments. The walls are thin. Gerald needs a home to grow into." I offered them 41A Rose Bend. Corner lot, fenced yard, plenty of light in the kitchen. I gave it to them at half the market rent. No lease. Just a verbal agreement between family. Told them to use the extra money for the baby. Sherry hugged me that day. I remember that because it only happened once. They moved in the next week. I helped them unpack. Set up Liam's bed, hung the curtains. I even sewed little star patches on the nursery blanket. Over time, they stopped mentioning the house like it was mine. Started calling it our place or the home we bought. I didn't correct them. I figured if they were happy, it didn't matter. A few years later, I told Gerald I'd started handing over management duties to a local firm. He nodded, barely listening. Truth is, I never gave up ownership. I just pulled back. Tired of being the one they called when the fridge made a noise or the lawn needed mowing. They assumed I'd sold everything off. I let them think that. Sherry even made a snide comment once during dinner. Something like, "It's nice you got to travel after selling the houses." I smiled and said nothing. I never traveled. I just stopped talking. In the second week at Brookshade, I pulled my suitcase from under the bed. The zipper still stuck halfway, but I got it open. Tucked beneath the sweaters and the old paperbacks was a thick brown folder. The edges were curled and soft, like something handled too many times. I slid it out and laid it on my lap. Inside were the papers they never asked about. Deeds, titles, tax documents, originals, not copies. I ran my finger along the top sheet. 41A Rose Bend. The house Gerald thought he owned. Still under my name. I'd kept 4 of the homes in total. The rest I sold off bit by bit. To pay for Gerald's college, Liam's braces, Sherry's emergency root canal. Every sale was a quiet goodbye, but those 4, I held onto them like a safety pin in the hem of a torn dress. Not for profit, and not to control anyone. Just because I needed to remember I hadn't given it all away. Nobody knew, nobody ever asked. They thought, once I got older, I forgot how to read fine print. They didn't see the folders I kept hidden in the cabinet, or the way I checked county records every year to make sure no one had touched anything. Even the management company folded a few years ago. Nobody followed up, not even Sherry. She handled all the bills now. She probably thought her name was on everything. I knew better. Holding those documents in my hands felt strange. Like I was touching something alive. A piece of my old self I hadn't looked at in years. I closed the folder and tucked it between the mattress and the wall. I didn't have a plan yet. I wasn't thinking about money or revenge. I just knew I still had something they didn't take from me. And that mattered. That night, Midge asked me if I wanted to come downstairs and watch the news. She thought it was 1993 again. Said she wanted to see who won the mayor's race. I told her maybe tomorrow. Then I lay back in bed, pulled the blanket up to my chin, and stared at the ceiling. The clock ticked, the lights buzzed. But for the first time since I arrived, I didn't feel small. I felt like someone who still had a name. Tuesdays were slow at Brookshade. The hairdresser didn't come till Thursday, and the puzzle group had already finished the border of the same 1,000-piece image of a barn they'd been working on for weeks. Midge was napping after breakfast, and I had nothing else to do but sit in the lounge near the vending machines, pretending to read a book I couldn't focus on. It was the kind of quiet that makes your ears ring. I was halfway through the same page for the 3rd time when I heard a soft thud from the far end of the hall. Someone was fiddling with the Coke machine. The dollar kept getting spit out. He was tall, wore a worn-out windbreaker, and had silver hair that needed a trim. Looked like he'd driven a long way, or maybe hadn't slept right. His hands looked like they'd seen years of hard work. Knuckles thick, nails clean, but uneven. He tried again. The machine blinked, and swallowed his money but didn't give him the drink. He sighed, then turned toward me. Guess I was asking too much for a cold soda today, he said with a half smile. I shrugged. You've got better odds asking the nurse for warm water. He chuckled, and then his brow furrowed as he stepped a bit closer. You're Elizabeth Young, right? I froze, not because I was scared, but because no one had said my full name in weeks. Not since the nurse read it off a clipboard during intake, and even she pronounced it wrong. Yes, I said slowly. I am. He nodded like he knew. My daughter used to rent from you. Back on Rosebend Circle, number 9, tiny place with the yellow door. I blinked. Amber Peterson? He grinned. That's my girl. I'm Marvin. Of course, I remembered now. Amber was young, single, and trying to juggle 2 jobs back then. She had a dog that kept escaping through the back fence. And during one winter, 2003 maybe, her water heater burst 2 days before Christmas. You're the one who called about the leak. I came out during that snowstorm, I said, sitting up a little straighter. He nodded, impressed. I remembered. Yeah, you didn't just call a plumber. You showed up with towels, a wrench, and hot chocolate. My daughter never forgot that. Neither did I. I hadn't thought about that in years. Marvin took the seat next to mine. Not across, not facing. Just beside me like old neighbors on a porch. No small talk, no pity in his tone. Just calm. Like we were picking up a conversation left unfinished. He looked around the lounge. I visit my cousin on the 2nd floor. Been coming once a week since she moved in. It's not a bad place, just quiet. That was one word for it. He didn't ask why I was here, and I didn't explain. Instead, we sat in silence for a few minutes. But it wasn't awkward. It was the kind of silence where breathing felt easier. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a peppermint. You still like these? I smiled and took it. You've got a good memory. My wife used to keep a dish full of them on the counter. We lost her 5 months ago. Cancer. I touched his arm gently. I'm sorry. He gave a short nod. Me too. We didn't say much after that. Just sat. The vending machine still blinked its red error light. Midge walked by once, talking to herself about a missed dentist appointment. I let her pass without calling out. Before Marvin stood to leave, he looked at me and said, Amber still talks about you. Said you were the only landlord who ever cared if her heat worked before the holidays. It hit me in the chest, not in a painful way, just deep. I'd been called a lot of things lately. Ma'am, patient, dependent, but not someone who cared. Not in a while. After he left, I stayed there a little longer, peppermint still in my hand. The lounge was quiet again, but something inside me wasn't. I wasn't just someone waiting for the next meal tray or medication round. I was still the woman who fixed pipes in a snowstorm, who showed up, who mattered to someone. That reminder settled into my bones. When I returned to my room, I pulled out the folder again from under my mattress. I didn't open it, just touch the cover. I wasn't done yet, and I didn't need anyone's permission to start moving again. The next morning, I dialed a number I hadn't used in years. Lavinia Rooks used to be a paralegal, sharp as a tack, worked for a small real estate office in Worthington. We'd met when I was finalizing a lease agreement for a duplex I owned back then. She was the type who read every word twice and always kept a spare pen in her hair. When the office closed, she retired early and moved out to Grove City. I never forgot her number, even after I stopped managing the properties myself. She picked up after the second ring. Still alive, she said, instead of hello. Figured you were sipping iced tea in Florida by now. I wish, I replied. I'm at Brookshade. She didn't ask for the full story. She never did, just waited. I need help moving my properties into a trust, quietly, without Gerald or Sherry knowing. A long pause. Then her voice came back low and steady. How many? 4. Another pause. And one of them's theirs. Yes, 41 a Rosebend. I could hear her flipping through her mental filing cabinet. Still under your name? It always was. Lavinia let out a small chuckle. Smart woman. You always played the long game. She invited me to meet her at a diner on the South End, the one near the bus depot, where no one asks questions and the coffee's always lukewarm. We met that Saturday afternoon. She wore a red scarf and handed me a brochure across the table. Willow Haven Trusts, it read. Plain cover, no fluff. They handle quiet transfers, she said. No mail to home addresses. No public trace unless someone's really digging. You'll still own it, but under the trust's name. If you want to sell, rent, even donate. No one has to know it's you unless you say so. I opened the brochure, scanned the steps. Seemed simple enough. I don't want revenge, I said. I just want the power back in my hands. She stirred her tea. You're not taking revenge. You're reclaiming what's yours. We filed the papers that following week. It took a few phone calls and some notarized signatures, but within 10 days, all 4 properties were legally transferred to Willow Haven Trusts. I was listed as the trustee, but only in internal records. To the outside world, I didn't exist on paper. Even Gerald's house, well, the one he thought he owned, was now fully under the trust. Once it was done, Lavinia mailed out certified notices of ownership change to each address. Legal, cold, no personal touches. I waited. 3 days later, I got the first call. It went to voicemail. Sherry's voice was tight and rushed. Hi, Elizabeth. We got something strange taped to our door from some trust company. Gerald says you might know what's going on. Can you call us back when you get this? I didn't. That night, I sat by the small window near the TV lounge and watched the sun disappear behind the parking lot fence. Nobody talked to me. Midge had gone to bed early. The nurses were busy. And for once, I didn't feel invisible. I felt solid. The next voicemail came 2 days after that. Sherry again. This time, she didn't sound so polite. We're confused. Gerald can't figure out what's happening, and the mortgage statement looks different. Did you sell the house? Why would you do that without telling us? Please call us. I didn't. They were looking for someone to explain it all, hoping I'd fall back into the same role I always played. Fixer, helper, giver. But this time, I wasn't handing out answers. I had given them enough. More than enough. Free rent. Free childcare, free holidays where I cooked and cleaned while they smiled for pictures. And when it stopped being convenient, they packed me up and dropped me off. Now they were feeling uncertain, uneasy, like maybe the ground under them wasn't as steady as they'd thought. Good, because it wasn't, and it never really had been. They just never cared enough to check whose name was actually on the deed. The following morning, Lavinia called to confirm all the transfers were finalized. You want to send an eviction notice? She asked. Not yet, I said. Let them sweat first. She chuckled. Cold. Not cold. I corrected her. Clear. That afternoon, while the others napped or shuffled bingo cards, I opened a blank notebook and started jotting down details. Every address, every tenant still living in one of my homes, who paid on time, who needed repairs, who sent Christmas cards. It wasn't about controlling people. It was about remembering that I still had something of value, something they didn't expect. That night, the staff served meatloaf. I finished every bite and went back to my room early. Midge stirred and mumbled something about a dance she was late for. I lay there in the dark, listening to the hum of the hallway light, my hands folded over the blanket. Sherry and Gerald thought they could erase me by putting me in this place, but they forgot who I was. And now, so did the paperwork. The next message from Gerald came 2 days after Sherry's last one. He sounded nervous, but tried to cover it with that calm tone he used when he was a kid and thought he could talk his way out of trouble. Mom, we really didn't know. We assumed you had signed it over or sold it years ago. That's what we thought. Can we just talk this through before it gets messy? Messy. That was his word, not mine. Another message followed that night. He left it around 10 p.m., later than he usually called, which told me the nerves were setting in. Mom, I'm not trying to be difficult, but the mortgage company said they don't recognize our lease. Everything's under some trust name now. I'm not even sure how this happened. Did you mean to do this? Yes, Gerald, I meant every part of it. I didn't return the call, or the one after that, or the email. By the time the formal lease revision was delivered, 30-day notice, market rate, standard terms, he and Sherry had stopped asking and started pleading. Elizabeth, Sherry said in her last message, her voice softer than I'd heard in years. We just need a little time to adjust. This was a shock. Gerald's job has been rocky, and with the boys, this is going to be hard on us. Please call us. No, Mom, just Elizabeth. I noticed that. The trust didn't leave room for family discounts or quiet arrangements. Everything now followed the same rules as everyone else. No cuts, no deals, no emotional loopholes. Their lease was updated. They were just tenants now. That week, I started spending my afternoons in the rec room. There was a woman named Flora, about my age, who had trouble seeing and no family visiting. She liked romance novels, but couldn't read the small print anymore. One day, I saw her squinting at a paperback and asked if she wanted me to read aloud for a bit. She nodded and patted the seat next to her. So every day after lunch, I sat by her chair near the window and read to her. Chapter after chapter. She never interrupted, just smiled and hummed at the good parts. Flora had a gentle way of leaning in when she was really listening. She'd tap her fingers lightly on the armrest when something sad happened, and sometimes she'd laugh out loud, even when I didn't expect it. Nobody asked me to do it. No schedule, no sign-up sheet. But I went anyway. It gave my days shape. It reminded me that my voice still mattered to someone. In the evenings, I'd write little notes in the margin of my notebook, ideas for next books, names of residents who might want to join next time. I was starting something small, but mine. Meanwhile, the calls from Gerald stopped. I figured they were talking to a lawyer or trying to sort through paperwork they never cared about, until now. I imagined them pacing in the kitchen of 41 A Rose Bend, wondering how they missed all the signs, probably blaming each other. The truth was, they never looked too hard. Gerald had always been a smart boy, but he got comfortable, thought the world would always hand him soft landings. And Sherry, she saw me as a helper, a built-in babysitter, someone to lean on, but not to respect. They didn't check the title because they never thought they had to. That Tuesday, Lavinia called to confirm the new lease had been signed. No complaints, no fight. They'd accepted the terms. Market rate, she said, and full term. Quiet as a mouse. I thanked her and hung up. Then I made tea and brought it to Flora, who was already waiting in the usual chair with her hands folded. She smiled as I sat down and said, "That book you read yesterday? I dreamed about it last night." I laughed softly. Was it a good dream? "Better than this place," she said. I understood. We read for almost an hour. Afterward, she leaned her head back and said, "You've got a steady voice. You sound like someone who used to be important." I looked at her and replied, "I still am." Later that night, I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling while Midge muttered something about a missing casserole. The room was still. My hands rested on my chest. I felt calm, not proud, not smug, just steady. I'd stopped asking to be seen, stopped waiting for them to notice my worth. And once I stopped, I found it for myself. They had their notice, and I had my peace. It came tucked inside my lunch tray, a plain white envelope. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting right away. Gerald always pressed too hard when he wrote. The letters looked like they were trying too hard to be perfect, but still came out crooked. I set the envelope aside and finished my mashed potatoes first. It sat on the table, waiting. I waited too. That night, after Midge fell asleep and the hallway settled into its usual hum, I opened it. The paper was lined and folded in half. 6 paragraphs, unevenly spaced, like he stopped and started a few times. He didn't begin with "Dear Mom," just jumped right in. He wrote that he hadn't known I still owned the house, that for years he thought I had sold it and moved on. He said he figured I didn't want to be involved anymore, that I'd gotten tired of the drama and backed away. He mentioned a memory, me ironing his school shirt the morning of his first field trip. Said he remembered how I packed extra snacks just in case. even though I couldn't afford to buy a sandwich for myself that day. He wrote, "You always showed up, and maybe that's why I never thought you'd stop." He didn't say sorry, not directly. But he wrote, "We didn't mean to push you out. We just thought you were okay with the distance." That line stuck. Okay with the distance. He made it sound like I chose to disappear. I folded the letter and held it in my hands for a minute. It didn't make me angry. It didn't make me cry either. It just felt tired. Like a knock at a door I no longer opened. He didn't mention the trust. Didn't ask for anything. Just shared some memories, left them on my tray, and hoped they'd land somewhere soft. I slid the letter into the drawer with the old paperback I still hadn't finished. Then I lay back down and stared at the ceiling until sleep finally came. The next morning, I called Lavinia. "I want to let go of the Pine Grove property," I said. "That's the one bedroom behind the old bakery?" "Yes, the one I bought after Hank died." She didn't ask why. She just said, "Who's it going to?" "There's a woman. Bernice Taylor, widow, early 60s. I want her to have it. No strings." We'd met briefly when she came to visit her sister here at Brookshade. She always brought fresh rolls from a bakery she worked at part-time. I'd watched her struggle to hide the limp in her left leg, never once mentioning it. We'd talked once or twice. She told me she lived in a motel while waiting for public housing. I wanted to give her something more than a waiting list. Lavinia handled the details. The deed was signed over through the trust. No spotlight, no noise. Just a clean transfer. When Lavinia called to say it was done, I felt something lift off my chest. That little house was the first thing I ever owned with my name on the paperwork. I'd wallpapered it myself, fixed the leaky faucet with duct tape and hope. Slept on the floor the first few nights because I couldn't afford a bed yet. Letting it go wasn't easy, but it felt right. That house gave me a start when I needed one. Now it would do the same for someone else. I didn't tell Gerald. I didn't tell anyone really. It wasn't about making a point. It was about finishing a chapter. A week passed before I looked at the letter again. I read it slowly this time, tried to hear his voice in the words, but it felt distant. Like someone trying to talk to a version of me that no longer existed. He meant well, maybe, but I no longer needed his good intentions to feel whole. The silence between us wasn't angry anymore, just quiet, like the end of a long story that didn't need retelling. That afternoon, I sat by the window with Flora. She reached for my hand and said, "You have the softest way of reading the sad parts." I smiled. They don't feel so sad anymore. I no longer waited for Gerald to call, or for Sherry to explain. I'd stopped waiting altogether, not because I gave up, but because I finally understood I was never supposed to sit in the background hoping to be noticed. I had something better now, peace, and a little space by the window where the sun still found me every morning. Most mornings now, I sit by the east window. The light comes in quiet and slow, stretching across the linoleum floor and warming the edge of my slippers. It's not much of a view, just the side parking lot and a few bushes that haven't bloomed in years. But it's mine. I bring my own chair from the room, the one with the wooden arms that creak when I shift. The nurses don't mind. They've gotten used to seeing me there with my notebook and a cup of black coffee. I don't bring the photo of Gerald anymore. I stopped keeping it in the drawer weeks ago. I don't need to see it to remember, and I don't need to remember to move forward. There's a peace in not needing anything from someone who once took up so much space in your life. Flora still listens to me read in the afternoons. She's been asking about poetry lately. Says it's easier on the ears than all the twisty love stories we were reading before. So I bring her short verses, old ones mostly. She smiles when I pause between lines, like she's holding on to every word. Sometimes other residents come over and sit close. They don't say much, just sit. I think they like the sound of something gentle. The staff calls me Miss Liz now. I don't correct them. It sounds nice, like I'm still a person with things to do. Last Thursday, I passed the community bulletin board by the elevator. It was cluttered with flyers, bingo, flu shots, a missing pair of glasses, but there was a blank space in the corner. I took a pen from my pocket, tore a page from my notebook, and wrote on it in clean, steady letters, "Dignity doesn't shout, it simply refuses to shrink." Then I pinned it up and walked away. Nobody said anything about it, but a few days later, someone had underlined the word "refuses" in red. That was enough. One afternoon, I saw Gerald's car in the parking lot. Same gray sedan he's driven for years. He sat in the driver's seat with the engine off, staring at the front entrance for 5, maybe 6 minutes. Then he started the car again and pulled away. He didn't come inside. I didn't wave. There was nothing left to say. He had tried to fix something too late, and I had already built something better in its place. I still had my folder. I still had my name on paper, where it counted. But more than that, I had something no document could show: boundaries, peace, a quiet life on my terms. Midge still talks in her sleep. Flora still hums when I read. And every so often, a nurse asks if I used to be a teacher or something because of how steady my voice is. I just smile. There's no need to explain. Some days are quiet, some feel slow, but none of them feel wasted anymore. This life, right here, this small, careful life, is mine. No one is waiting for me to give more than I have. And I'm not waiting for someone else to see me, because I see myself now, and that's more than enough. To those of you watching, maybe you've given too much. Maybe you've waited for someone to say thank you, or to come back and fix what they broke. But maybe, like me, you found peace when you finally stopped waiting. Have you ever given someone everything, only to find peace when you stopped giving? If you understand that feeling, leave a comment. You don't have to explain. Just let the world know you're still here, you're still standing. And if this story touched you in any way, please like, share, and subscribe. We've got more stories for women like us, quiet, strong, and full of life still left to live.